A manhunt for escaped prisoners turns deadly as they hijack an American yacht to escape the country. A terrifying story, a breakdown in police procedure, technology that could have helped but wasn't used, and lessons for all of us cruisers. This is the story of the Grenada hijacking. I don't enjoy telling these stories, but we do it because we need to know the truth. How safe is living on a sailboat down in paradise? Should we believe the fearful headlines and Facebook reports of crime? What's being blown out of proportion? And are there countries we should genuinely avoid altogether? And by reviewing these stories, what can we do to make our own journeys on sailboats safer? Last year, this story made all the major news outlets with terrifying headlines. Ralph Hendry and Kathleen Brandel aboard SV Simplicity, a 48-foot St Francis Catamaran, was a brutal and visceral emotional event. It reverberated through the yachting community in the Grenadian and St Vincentian populations, leaving all of us shocked, horrified, deeply saddened, and feeling terrible for the relatives and friends of the victims. Ralph and Kathy were beloved long-term, long-distance cruisers. They've been living aboard for years. Their choice of boat, the St Francis Catamaran, 48 feet, 25,000 pounds, built in South Africa. They called her Simplicity. To give you an idea of what the St Francis 48 is made of, here's one quick review from an owner about their 48, same boat. "I don't like going to weather, only a fool or racer would," the owner writes. "We have had to do it often enough on ocean passages, though. We've never had any damage, including legs with green water coming all the way over the hardtop. One such passage was a 1,300-mile trip from Fiji to Opua, New Zealand. Our weather router had promised a spirited sail with a need to brace ourselves toward the end. He was dead right about the weather. We were on a hard port tack for the entire voyage. For the first 4 days, we could not even lay New Zealand, and we were headed instead for Antarctica. We had winds between 25 and 38 knots and regularly took green water over the hardtop. We were double reefed on the main, and the Jenny was about 50%. Our boat speed was 7 to 9.5 knots. Well, you might say, no wonder you were taking a shackling, going so fast in those conditions. Our reasoning, there was much worse weather on the way, and it was reassuring to be able to sail fast out of harm's way. We made Opua in 5.5 days, and just in front of the dangerous low that was coming. We arrived with absolutely no damage to the hull or rigging. True, the crew were still vibrating for a day or two, but the boat was fine." Ralph and Kathy had made thousands of miles aboard Simplicity and were members of the Salty Dawg Sailing Association. Salty Dawg, by their own words, says, "The mission of Salty Dawg Sailing Association is to educate sailors, build camaraderie, and facilitate offshore passages. We're an educational and charitable organization that conducts rallies, educational seminars and webinars, and rendezvous to help sailors realize their long-distance cruising dreams. The underlying principle of this volunteer-led organization is to transfer knowledge and skills from veteran Salty Dogs to less experienced sailors, enabling independent decision-making and developing offshore confidence. Truly, sailors helping sailors. Excellent." Ralph and Kathy had joined the Salty Dawg many years earlier, with Kathy even sitting on their board. They had sailed Simplicity in the 2023 Caribbean Rally from Hampton, Virginia to Antigua, and were spending the winter cruising the Eastern Caribbean. Salty Dawg has a live members tracking map where boats can be followed as they cruise, and Simplicity's track shows Kathy and Ralph were anchored in Grenada, and then the boat moved directly to its last anchorage in St. Vincent. By all accounts, they were a warm-hearted, generous couple who made very competent sailors, very experienced liveaboards with lots and lots of miles behind them. On February 18, 2024, the Simplicity was anchored off Anse Beach in Grenada, just a few blocks away from the South St. George police station. In the police station, locked in cells, were 3 men: Trayvon Robertson, 23, Atiba Santaclaus, 25, and Ron Mitchell, 30. Charges at the time were 1 count of robbery with violence. The eldest inmate also was charged with 1 count of rape. 3 counts of attempted rape, and 2 counts of indecent assault and causing harm. I want to take a second to paint a picture of this police station. In an article written later, Chris Doyle, founder of Doyle Cruising Guides, who lives in Grenada, said, "The 3 yacht hijackings that I know of in Grenada spanning over 50 years were all carried out by escaped prisoners. Plus, at around the same time as this recent tragedy, a man charged with murder had escaped police custody in Grenville, Grenada, and as I write this, is still at large." So Grenada has had issues in the past with prisoners escaping, and that's what these 3 men aim to do. In a press conference with Grenada authorities, they explain how one of the men asked to go to the bathroom, and while being escorted to do so right before bedtime, pushed past police officers and began their escape plan. The other 2 men somehow got out at the same time, and the 3 of them were out of the building and on the streets within seconds. The men took flight from law enforcement and by 10 p.m. made it to a few short blocks away at the Anse Beach, where AIS shows the Simplicity was anchored. They made it to the boat somehow and boarded her, with Ralph and Kathy presumably sleeping at this hour. Now, why the jail cells in South Grenada Police Station don't have toilets, I'm not sure. How the 3 men managed to get out of the building and down the street is unclear. And arriving at the beach and boarding what is possibly the slowest form of escape, a sailboat, seems odd. What happens next is unclear, but what we do know is what AIS showed. The Simplicity weighed anchor and proceeded north into the sea with no police in pursuit. It's as if, in the few blocks from the jail to the beach, the police lost them entirely. What we know next was what was published at boatwatch.org when the Simplicity was found 80 miles away on a beach in St. Vincent. The headline, "American sailing couple disappears in Caribbean. Their yacht is found 80 miles away. Kathy, Brandel, and Ralph Hendry were sailing in Grenada when they went missing February 18th. Police allege 3 local prison escapees may be responsible for their disappearance." A sailing captain and member of Salty Dawg himself was paddleboarding along the St. Vincent shore when he noticed a ramshackled yacht with a broken sail. Concerned, he boarded the abandoned SV Simplicity. Its deck was covered with blood. Then the captain found 2 American passports belonging to Kathy Brandel and Ralph Hendry. The captain took photographs of the yacht, sending them to an email address he found in a note on board. "The ship inside is very messy," he wrote in the email to Salty Dawg Sailing Association. "Can you help contact the owners?" But the association president Bob Osborne says he could not reach the couple with the contact info they had. The entire interior of the vessel and its deck were ransacked, a sail torn and blowing in the wind. Automatic Identification System, AIS, collected by the U.S. Coast Guard shows SV Simplicity leaving the Grenada harbor around 10 p.m. February 18th and arriving in St. Vincent around noon the next day. That is about a 12-hour sail for that boat. The Royal Grenada Police Force links the couple's disappearance to the escape of the 3 prisoners from the nearby holding cell February 18th, per a press release on Tuesday alleging the men may have killed the couple. With the help of the Good Samaritan who found the boat and a lot of locals in St. Vincent, the 3 men were quickly found and arrested. A video surfaced of the arrest here.
Yeah, I watched it together.
According to accounts, Ralph and Kathy may have been slain on the vessel while en route to St. Martin. The Grenada Police Department announced Thursday that they were actively investigating leads that indicate that 2 of the occupants of the yacht may have been killed. According to AIS data, the yacht left Grenada around 10 p.m. on Sunday from Grenadines Beach. The vessel's speed was not reflective of the sailors, who are known as fair weather sailors, who go exceedingly slowly and safely, according to the Grenada Cruisers Information Facebook page. What is believed to have happened was that the escaped prisoners boarded the vessel and murdered Ralph and Kathy as they made the 80-mile sail to St. Vincent. But there were no bodies on board when the boat was found. A lot of blood on deck and in the master stateroom led police to assume the worst, and later, 2 of the men actually confessed to the crime. They murdered them. Chris Doyle goes on to write, "In the aftermath of the Simplicity event, communication between Grenada and St. Vincent police departments was excellent. The AIS, which Simplicity had and was broadcasting, was reported online, though maybe not noticed until after. Had the Coast Guard in St. Vincent and the Grenadines and Grenada been aware of the AIS and trained on how to use AIS, they may have been able to intercept the boat in time to prevent the tragedy. Did the police know the criminals hijacked the boat? Had they known, they could have used the AIS, which is available to anyone online, to locate the boat very quickly and send fast response boats out to intercept it, possibly before the criminals killed the occupants. Chris goes on to say that when something like this happens, it's natural to put the whole community on edge, with a tendency to make people think they're in more immediate danger than the facts warrant. He says, "Since I arrived in Grenada in 1969, cruising in the Caribbean has been generally safe. I base this on the number of yachts I see sailing up and down and the number of incidents that come to my attention. With a murder rate of 4 per 100,000, less than the US and far less than many other Caribbean nations, Grenada itself is relatively safe. Overall in the Caribbean, there are many bareboat charter companies and thousands of cruising boats. The number has grown annually. Hundreds of boats move up and down and anchor every day without problems. This is the reality against which to balance this recent disaster." So what can we learn from this? Being boarded is always a risk in any country, and while we don't expect escaped prisoners, it can happen. Desperate men on a desperate mission to escape. Chris says that in all his years in Grenada, he has never experienced anything like this, but his boat has an entry alarm system, which to date has never gone off. He also talks about how most cruising boats leave companionway doors and hatches wide open at night on the assumption that sailboats at anchor are relatively safe. The advice he gives is that while being anchored a ways from shore does provide a margin of safety, the more remotely you anchor, the harder it can be to get help if you need it. It's safe to anchor in a pack of other boats that will hear you if you call for help, and a group of boats is a much less inviting target for would-be thieves or criminals. Anchoring around a built-up city always presents more risk too. In comparison, in the Bahamas, sailors generally do feel safe in most places, with the exception of Freeport and Nassau. These are the big cities in the Bahamas, and all sailors I know consider those to be nothing more than fuel and grocery stops, not a place to stay for a minute longer than you need to. Another no-go on the Caribbean roster is usually Haiti, known for crime and, of course, mosquito-borne dangers. Most sailors avoid it entirely. Honduras is a hotspot people don't like to go to as well. All said, sailors aren't going to stop sailing. We're going to continue to visit the amazing people and beautiful cultures in these island nations. As the sailors, it's our job to make sure we're safe. That means boarding up and locking doors and hatches, trying to travel in packs of buddy boats when we can, not leaving inviting theft targets on deck or in the dinghy, and being respectful toward locals and the environment on these islands. I like Chris's idea too, a very loud audible alarm system that could be triggered by forced entry to the companionway or by remote from inside the cabin. An incredibly loud audible alarm would have scared away any criminal, alerting anyone nearby that there's an emergency, and at very least make a boat a less attractive target to steal. Also remember to take the key out of the diesel on the start panel. I think we all forget that one. It's obvious that Ralph and Kathy didn't do anything wrong here. They were the victims of some very desperate men. And our hearts go out to the victims of this tragedy, their families and their friends. And a big thank you to Salty Dawg for their role in putting the pieces together for all of us after this horrible event. Joining an organization like Salty Dawg isn't just about all the extra resources they're going to give you to help you make passage, but it's about the camaraderie of running with other boats, other sailors, and hopefully minimizing danger. It's also about the communication these groups give you with all the other sailors and all the other anchorages at all the other islands. You can find them at saltydogsailing.org, but also note the Sail to the Sun rally on Facebook with Wally if you're traveling down the US East Coast, the ARC rally on Facebook if you're crossing the Atlantic, and countless other resources online that connect us all together to keep us safer. Don't go it alone if you don't have to.